Everybody joining is feeling very shy by the looks of it and has their cameras off, but that's fine. That's fine. Brilliant. Well, it's past the starting time, so I feel like we can get started. Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sonia Jenkins, and I am the WTUN Development Manager. WTUN obviously standing for the World Technology Universities Network, and this is our annual Congress. I want to welcome you all to today's session. I'm already out of breath, sorry guys. Which is our parallel session today, which is how does the higher education landscape look across the world? And today we'll be giving both a geographical and a social perspective. I've got three fantastic speakers lined up for you today, so I'm just going to take a minute to introduce them. Kamilla, don't laugh at that. We have to be confident.
Yes, I know. I am.
And then we will get straight underway with our presentations, and we will have some time at the end for questions. When we get to questions, you can either submit using the chat panel on the side, or if you would like to raise your hand and ask your question directly, you're more than welcome to do that. So our speakers today, we have Miss Kamilla Trubicki, who is the head of the International Office from the University of Applied Sciences, Upper Austria, who are one of our newest members at WTUN. We also have Professor Renata Archibong, who is an International Affairs Deputy Officer from our Brazilian member, Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Norte, which was one of our founding members. And also we have Professor Archibong, who is a Professor of Diversity at the University of Bradford, which was also one of our founding members and also our network host member. So we're really excited to have all three speakers here today. And without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Kamilla, who's going to give our first presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the nice introduction, Sonia. Let me just share my screen here. I hope you can see it.
Thank you.
Yes. So welcome everybody also from my side. Thank you very much for joining this session. It's a pleasure actually to be here and be presenting, even though it's virtual and not the real thing. Even though this is going to be the real thing for some time, I believe. But anyway, so as has been said, I work for the University of Applied Sciences in Upper Austria, which, as you probably know, Austria is located in the heart of Europe. So we're right here in the center of Europe. We're a very small country next to Germany, Italy, and other famous neighbors. So I will be presenting today the higher education landscape in Austria, which will just be an overview for your information, maybe also presenting some current issues and outlooks. So just as a brief starter, I wanted to show you the Austrian educational system just as a basis. So in general, our education up to university level is 12 or 13 years. So depending on the type of high school that people choose, which are actually a lot, as you can see, we have a lot of different types of high schools that provide either very academic and general education or even vocational education up until secondary level that would enable you to study at a university or University of Applied Sciences or any higher education institution in Austria. So 12 or 13 years leading up to higher education in Austria. If we look at the type of education that we offer in higher education in Austria, it has been changing a lot after the Bologna process in Europe. So after the Bologna conference in 1999, our higher education system in Austria has been restructured. So now what we do basically is following the European higher education area structures with the bachelor's and master's programs, which the bachelor's take 3 years of time and the master's programs 2 years of time. So that would be 180 ECTS credits and 120 for the master's. And then afterwards, obviously, there is the opportunity to follow up with a PhD. That's actually at least 3 years. It says 2 years, but to be more realistic, it's actually 3 years. You can also see here on the right side that we do have diploma degree programs. So before we introduced the Bologna system in Austria, our studies used to be diploma programs. All of them basically taking 4 years of time, 240 credits, equivalent credits to ECTS. And then afterwards, we had direct access to PhD programs. So the majority of Austrian higher education institutions has already switched most of their programs to bachelor master system, but there are still some programs in specific areas like law or maybe even medicine that have not switched to the bachelor master programs and that still follow the diploma degree structure. And then after upon completion, actually, you will receive the title of a Magister in Austria, which I think is equivalent to many other qualifications across Europe as well. And then looking at not only the type of education that we offer, but the type of higher education institutions that we have in Austria, you can see that there's quite a lot in this graph. So the first ones are actually colleges and post-secondary institutions that would offer types of diplomas and so on, but not really higher education as a bachelor or a master. So what we're really looking at in order to complete studies are universities. That would be in Austria, we have 70 different institutions. They consist of public institutions, public universities actually. Then also we have universities of applied sciences, which I will explain later. We do have teacher education, university colleges, and then also private universities. So those would be the four main types of higher education institutions that we have in Austria that offer bachelor's, master's, and PhD education. In all, we have around 350,000 students enrolled in studies at the moment, and then you can see the split by percentage according to the university type. So obviously most of the students are in public universities. We have 16% more or less currently enrolled in universities of applied sciences, and then the rest splits between teacher education, university colleges, and private universities. Interesting actually is that female enrollment and graduation across all types of universities is more than 50%. But then, of course, if you look at the specific disciplines, this might be different a lot, or this might differ a lot actually. As you can imagine, in all types of STEM studies, for example, female participation is much lower than, let's say, social sciences or similar types of studies. And then looking at international student enrollment, it really is very different across the different types of educational institutions in Austria. If you look at universities of applied sciences, for example, we have around 18% of international students. If you look at private universities, it's around 58%. So this is quite a lot of a difference. Good. Something that I wanted to cover because it might be very, or I think it's very specific to Austrian higher education, is the distinction between universities and universities of applied sciences. Now, looking at the definitions that I put here, basically what universities do, they focus on distinguished teaching and research excellence at the highest level, obviously, but their main focus always is basic research, versus universities of applied sciences that focus on as well scientifically rigorous professional education, but always at a higher education level. So it's not let's say carpenters, but it's really higher education level, scientifically education that is very much practice oriented. And I will maybe go more into the details of the differences of universities and universities of applied sciences. So if we look at the history, universities are a concept that has been around for ages, basically. It's a traditional model of higher education in Austria and has been existing since, I don't know, several hundred years. Looking at universities of applied sciences, there has been a law introduced in 1993, so that's very recent, that allowed actually the establishment of universities of applied sciences. So it's a very new concept in Austria, and we have actually, our institution has been one of the first one, or I think the first one, to actually be established. Looking at where universities and universities of applied sciences are in Austria, you could probably imagine, based on the history, that universities are located more in the centers, more in central locations in big cities, whereas universities of applied sciences are in many cases spread across the country and also in maybe less central areas, which is also a good point because it allows students not only from the cities, but also from the countryside to have accessible study options. Speaking of access, the system is a little bit different how you can actually get access to the university versus University of Applied Sciences. Most universities have open study places for most students, unless of course it's medicine or there's some directions that are limited. But in general, studies at universities are possible for everyone who fulfills the criteria. At the universities of applied sciences, you always have an admission procedure. You always have to apply to get in. You always have to go through an interview and so on. So this is the main difference as well, looking at it from the student's perspective. If you look at the teaching approach and the focus, universities of applied sciences have a more practice-oriented approach. So what we do is we have a lot of hands-on content in our classes. We have a lot of also external lecturers coming in from industry teaching classes, and in general, classes are very practice oriented. So there's a lot of participation actively involved for the students. If we look at the study organization, the universities actually provide, some would say they would provide more freedom for the students. They have, of course, there's a curriculum for a specific program that students have to fulfill, but students get to choose when they take their classes and how long they will take for their studies. But that also means that sometimes they might have to wait. If a class is full, they might have to wait for 1 or 2 semesters to actually be able to take it. At the universities of applied sciences, we have a much more let's say strict organization. We have a curriculum that needs to be followed by all the students in the same manner. So it's they join us and they receive their timetables for every semester. So it's all taken care of for them, and it's the same, basically the same flow chart for all of them following the same studies. In addition to that, the groups are very small. So at our university, for example, we have study groups of around 30 students, depending on the program, might be less actually as well, which really allows students to be working practice-oriented way, in a very hands-on way. And then, of course, we have a lot of laboratory classes included, especially at the School of Engineering, where I'm from. A lot of education is really, or a lot of studying is happening hands-on in small groups. In addition, all this organization also leads to that success, that students are actually done in time, so they can actually plan when they will graduate, how long they will take for their studies, and it's easier plannable for them. Good. If we look at funding, especially if we talk about research funding, there's a main difference as well, which is actually not so easy on us. There is, for universities of applied sciences, we do not have any core funding for research. So that means for all our research activities, we need to apply for third-party funding, be it through national agencies or public, research associations, the European Union, and so on. So basically, all our funding that we do for research activities at universities of applied sciences has to be organized by ourselves. So that's the main difference as well. And of course, it's causing us some challenges as well. And then one of the biggest differences and also challenges for us is that at the moment, PhDs are only awarded at universities, at traditional universities. So universities of applied sciences or other higher education institution types in Austria do not have the right to award PhD titles. So that means in our case, for example, we have a huge research organization, and we have a lot of staff working on their research projects with us, but they are at the same time enrolled at a different university to officially be part of a PhD program. We have been, or in general, universities of applied sciences in Austria have been discussing this for several years now, and this is one of the hot topics always being discussed. And we hope that we'll be able in the future to also be included in a formal PhD education as an institution of applied sciences. Good. So I think that's just to be brief, I don't want to extend my time. That's the main characteristics of universities and universities of applied sciences. But all in all, I think it has to be said that it's a good organization, and both university types are kind of complementary. So there's an offer for everybody, and all of them work very well in the ways they work. If we look at things that are up for discussion. I think it's the same or similar topics as you are probably dealing with in your countries. Of course, every institution wants to improve their study offers and provide innovative study offers. We are always looking at dual or part-time study offers for students who work or have to work. Digitalization is a big thing, obviously, as it is around the globe probably. In general, what a lot of universities and universities of applied sciences are looking for in Austria is to improve their transfer of technology and innovation into the region so that the region can actually benefit from students and graduates. And then, of course, other hot topics are third mission, diversity, inclusion, sustainability. Those are topics that will definitely keep us busy over the next years. Good. That was a very brief glimpse into Austrian higher education. I hope it was useful. If you have any questions, Sonia, do we do them now or after?
We can wait till the end. I think if we do all the presentations,
Perfect.
and then we can move into a really nice question and answer and discussion at the end of all three of them.
Okay, very good. So then basically, if you have any questions either later, or you can also address me by email. Those are my contact details if you want to. Maybe I'll just briefly show you. This is where our university is located. So as I told you, in the very heart of Europe. And then our region that's called Upper Austria is the region with the 4 red dots. This is where our university is located. We have 4 different schools that are in 4 different cities. And actually, those are not big cities, but as I said before, decentralized locations. Well, then I think my time is almost up. So I will thank you for your attention and we'll be happy to hear and answer your questions later on. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kamilla. And like I said, if anybody does have any questions, we'll do them all at the end and you'll be able to submit them either on the chat or feel free to virtually raise your hand and then you'll be able to ask them directly. So thank you very much for that, Kamilla. Really interesting to hear about a different part of the world. It's always really interesting to hear. Next, we're going to move on to our speaker from Brazil, so Professor Renata Archibong, who is from the International Affairs Office at UFRN. So I am going to share her presentation and how's that?
That's it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Well, thank you, Sonia, for this warm welcome, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. Maybe we have attendance from different parts of the world, and since it's early in the morning in Brazil, maybe it's another time in other parts of the country. So thank you for being here, and thank you for having me. So this presentation aims to present really an overview of the Brazilian educational system, focusing, of course, on the higher education level, particularly with regard to the federal institutions as the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte, which I'm representing, UFRN. I'm expecting to share with you a little bit of our identity in order to point out some issues that maybe it's a common ground to all of us, and then discussing these important methods. Please, Sonia. Sonia will help me with this the presentation. This is the Brazilian the Brazilian educational system. We are up to 17 or 23 years of education. If you look at the primary education, secondary education, and then higher education, which we have different types of degrees. We have technology degrees which can go 2 or up to 3 years, bachelor's degrees and professional degrees. And then after higher education, we have, of course, master's degree lasting 2 years and doctorate degrees. On the bachelor's degrees, they also have aspiring teachers that they can take a licentiate degree, and then it takes 3 to 4 years to complete as well. And those technology degrees are in general highly specialized professional courses, and you can start with the technological degree and then go to an engineering courses. For example, in our university we have this. We have 3 years technology degree, and then you can move to an engineering, for instance. So this is basically how the Brazilian educational system looks. But now we are looking to we are going to see some numbers and to look into the higher education system specifically. Sonia, please. Next one. So we do have a federal higher education system. You should know that Brazil, it's a very, very large country. It's with approximately 2,000 million inhabitants, and which 8 millions are enrolled in higher education. And the Brazilian higher education system is quite sophisticated. It's very diverse, and there is a multiplicity of types of institutions. And according to our system, the higher education census, the system currently comprises more than 2,000 institutions divided between public and private sectors. The most significant number of higher education institutions is concentrated in the private sector, but there is more than almost 300 public institutions, and among them we have the federal higher education system. So into the federal higher education system, we have 110 institutions with around up to 2 million students, 140,000 teachers, and approximately the same amount of staff technicians. So it's a lot of people working in this system. And then among them, we have the federal universities. Federal universities are public universities. And University of Rio Grande do Norte, Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte, is a public institution. It's a public federal university. We have 69 of them. And we also have within the system federal institutes and colleges, which are common among all of them, that they are public. They have a public funding. They belong to the government system. So that's why we do not receive private funding. And all our resources come, most of them, from the federal government, the central federal government. Next one, please, Sonia. So now I would like to present our state and the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte. Maybe you should, Brazil. Brazil, it's, as I have already said, a very large country. We are located in the northeast coast, and this is our state, Rio Grande do Norte. It looks like a little bit like an elephant, if you can see. And we are, as a university, we are located on these blue spots. We have actually 6 campuses. The central campus and the health campus in Natal, which is the capital of the state. And then we have 2 schools in what we call the countryside, the Seridó Higher Education in Caicó and Currais Novos. Then we have an agricultural school really very close to Natal in Macaíba, and then another health science college in Santa Cruz. We also are present in 62 communities with community service actions, and we also have 20 poles for distance learning support within the state. So we are present in particularly all the state of Rio Grande do Norte. Next one, Sonia, please. So this is some of our numbers. We are among the largest universities in the country. We have more than 41,000 students, more than 2,300 teachers, staff members, and also other staff. And we are a community, very large community of more than 48,000 people. And in addition to this expressive size of public institutions, we are very large. Our presence in the state of Rio Grande do Norte, it's very strategic. The university plays a very strategic role in regional and national development. In regional, because we deal with a lot of issues that are very strong necessities of the state, and within the national development with the national issues as well. So next one, please. So we have 112 undergraduate courses, 102 are on site, and then 10 of them are distance learning. We have also graduate courses, master's degrees, and doctorate courses. We are considered a research university. We have a lot of research, a lot of research groups, almost 500 research groups, and we do a lot of outreach activities as well. So it's a very it's a particular public universities in Brazil. They do not only teaching, they also do research, and they also have a strong activity in the outreach with the community, with the society, with outreach community. So this is not different with Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte. So we are considered as well as a teaching university, but as a research university as well. Next one, Sonia, please. This is a little a glimpse of our strategic plan. We are committed very strongly with the relationship with society, with an institutional development, and with academic development. So our mission and our goals are with society to strengthen UFRN's public value. So this value means a lot to us because public universities in Brazil have a commitment to society that finances them. So as a university, we must disseminate knowledge and seek to approach and to foster cultural, social, and economic development within our environment. As institutional development, we seek to improve, of course, institutional communication, to develop governance, strategic planning, risk management. We also look to promote energy sustainability, the environment, and information technologies. And as an academic development, of course, our mission is to promote teaching, research, outreach, and innovation. We look forward to develop innovative academic methodologies, articulate UFRN's competences with society demands, and of course, inclusion policies as an institutional policy. Inclusion is very important for us because we do have a lot of disparities in educational, socioeconomic in the profiles of our students, and especially in the public face system, students struggles to pay their studies, to go to higher education, and those differences in socioeconomic status are sometimes more pronounced in times of crisis, particularly when we think about our our current time with this pandemic and so on. So we have to look very carefully with inclusion, because most of the enrollment in higher education in Brazil is still the privilege of the elite. According to an CDC Education at Glance 2018 report, fewer than 20% of the segment of the population between the ages of 25 and 34 years hold an university degrees. And another survey in 2018 as well, 18 as well, shows that the socioeconomic profile of the students of federal universities or federal higher education institutions shows that 70% of undergraduate students at these institutions come from families with a monthly income of up to 1,050 reais, which is around 350 US dollars. So this is not much. And then we do have a very social responsibility to promote inclusion of all these students. And although our public institutions are tuition free, and so those students can afford, well, they can enter the university, but competition is very fierce, and it's not easy to enter in these institutions. And sometimes they cannot have access to enter the public university, and then they have to go to private universities, and so they cannot afford it. So this is very this is a hard reality that we have to face with these inclusion policies. Next one, Sonia. Thank you. So because of that, we really have to deal with the changes in the higher education landscape. We do think that higher education is no longer a luxury. It really shouldn't have to be something that only the elite have access. It is not only essential to national, social, and economic development, but also the human development. So students should have access to the universities. And right now we are really, as I was saying, we are really dealing with that and promoting a lot of initiatives to guarantee access to students. We do have some policies like the quota policies for students that cannot have access to who cannot easily enter university. So those quotas are from students from social underprivileged background, and also for Black students as well, indigenous students as well. So they have a quota to enter, to have access to the university that is different from the general entrance. And inclusion policies also deal with socioeconomic inequalities. For instance, within this pandemic, when we started the online classes, we were very concerned about how students could have access to internet, to computers and or mobile phones with smart phones to go to classes, to accompany the classes, and then we have promoted some strategies to give them help, a financial help to get online internet access, to pay for internet access, and then go to the online courses. And of course, we have also these financial resources to have access with this technology, to internet access. It's very, very important to guarantee this inclusion. We also have support teachers with no training and experience in the online education, in order to maintain the quality and the excellences of our courses. Of course, we have to have flexibility and think about innovation in pedagogy as well. And those are challenges that we are facing now, that we are living in this unique moment because of the pandemic, but not only, because I think those challenges will last. And so flexibility is a key word for looking into the future. In the case of the less privileged students, as we have said, we have funded them to buy prepaid internet plans, so to attend online classes. And this is very difficult because in Brazil we do not have the culture of philanthropy. So to donate for universities, so universities donate money to universities, so universities can have money to fund their social policies, their inclusion policies. So we have to deal with our own resources, the resources that are already small, and also because we are struggling with budget cuts from the federal government. So this is not easy, but this emergency support for the off-campus activities and for online classes are already happen, and we think this is a huge that there is a huge impact on the life of these students, and benefiting them to not drop out and to not fail into their courses. I think that's it. In truth, we thinking about this global south, thinking about university in a country, in a developing country as Brazil. We really think that we need a complete transformation. We need to reform. We need to react to circumstances. But we have to think about all of that, but providing quality assurance to foster student persistence, to avoid dropouts. We have to support, we have smart diversification and provide society with the knowledge base source that they need. So some of these initiatives are already happening. Those are movements towards diversification of systems, which goes alongside with an increasing concern for social inclusion and affirmative actions. We really care about accessibility, about inclusion, and about making a better contribution to society, to help society, to help our state, to help our community to develop not only social, economic, to have a social and economic development, but also, as we have said, a human development as well. So you do have our websites on these last slides, and feel free to thank you all for listening to me very carefully, and I'll be able to answer some questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Professor Renata. Oh, I think we need to mute one of our participants. There we go. Thank you very much for that presentation. It's always really interesting to hear from a university that's very different to the one that I'm based in, because you are, I think, approximately 100 times larger. So next, we're going to move on to our final presentation, which is from Professor Udi Archibong, who is a Professor of Diversity from the University of Bradford. And then after that, we will have plenty of time to do some questions and answers. So thank you very much, Professor Udi.
Thank you very much, Sonia, and hello, other speakers. Thank you for the time. I'm going to try and share my screen now, and let's see how that works.
We can see that. Thank you, Professor.
Right, okay, thank you very much. My presentation is going to be slightly different because I believe very strongly that you cannot talk about HE landscape without looking at some of the social challenges within that landscape. So what I have decided to do is just to look at how universities have responded to Black Lives Matter, and how they have turned some of the words into action, sometimes not doing very well. And I'm going to base this on the UK as a case study, but really zooming into how Bradford University is responding to Black Lives Matter. So I want to start with a context that is very familiar globally. That COVID-19, as far as I'm concerned, has shown the world the structural inequalities that we have had over time. But what COVID has done is actually bring that to the surface, get people to really see that where you have a structurally unequal world, when things happen, then you expose the difficulties, and there is so much disproportionality across the world for different communities. So for example, in the UK, Black and Asian and minority ethnic communities have really suffered the death toll, the illness, and all the things that you would imagine of this pandemic. Just to give you a scale of how this has really challenged the UK, the UK Research and Innovation system has invested £4.3 million very, very quickly to look at the implications of COVID for Black and minority ethnic communities. So the scale here is, and this is an international thing, we know in the US that people from African American communities have really suffered the toll. So we've seen COVID and what it's done to different communities. And then 25th of May, during the pandemic, as if the pandemic was not challenging enough, we saw a broad daylight murder of a Black man on the streets of America. And so this shows the world that some of the things we have always taken for granted around police brutality, around societal behaviors that have promoted racism over time is live. And it's not just confined to the streets of United States of America. We have it in the UK. We know of a young guy called Stephen Lawrence that was murdered way back in the 90s. And it took a very, very long time, well over 20 years, for the people that murdered Stephen Lawrence to be brought to justice of some sort. So we know that there has been these issues, but that death showed the world the kinds of things that we've always ignored, the implications of our world and how our world is challenging humanity, particularly when it comes to Black lives. So many of the world's population have seemed to reach a point where many questions are being asked about race and inequalities linked to race. And we've seen a growing number of cases of injustice. Even since the death of George Floyd, we know that there are many other African Americans that have been murdered through police brutality. There has been elevation of the profile of Black Lives Matter, where people from all communities, Black, white, have come together to protest some of these inequalities that we see on our streets, in our organizations, that continue to suppress and oppress Black people. Even the word BAME, which stands for Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic, has become offensive for many people, because people are now challenging the homogenization that has come to dehumanize humans from Black backgrounds in particular. We realized that many organizations had sent messages of solidarity, and it was fascinating to see the response that we had in social media. For example, it was not uncommon immediately after George Floyd's death for organizations to send messages, and they would have response like, "Thanks for your message of support. Now, please send me an image of your executive team so we can match your words with what happens in reality." We do know that in the UK, there are quite a few studies that have been done, some of which have been conducted through the Center for Inclusion and Diversity that I direct. For example, we know that FTSE 100 has more CEOs called Steve than from an ethnic minority. That Metropolitan Police are twice as likely to fine Black people for breaking lockdown rule during this pandemic. That over 20%, there is over 20% attainment gap between Black and white students in UK higher education institutions. That 0.7% of UK university professors are Black. If you intersect Blackness with gender, then you have 0.27% professors are Black female. So think about that. There are 21,000 professors in the UK. Only 45 are Black females. That overall, from July 2010 to June 2015, 13.2% of Black and minority ethnic midwives who faced disciplinary proceedings were dismissed, as compared to 0.7% of their white counterparts. But during that period, 38 midwives were dismissed. Interestingly, 37 were from a Black and minority ethnic background. Within 5 years, 38 midwives dismissed, 37 from a Black and minority ethnic background. But out of those 37, 32 were Black or Black British, people who looked like me. So the big issue for us, therefore, in higher education institutions is actually to demand accountability around how we tackle racism in the context of higher education, through its delivery of education, through the people who work within that setting, through how they engage with the communities that they serve. And I really like the quote by Kendi that without the capacity for honest self-reflection and critical thinking, we'll all remain a people who swear they don't have a racist bone. And I'm not going to tell you who said that, but we do know that one world leader has this falseness around the fact that racism and white supremacy persist in our society unchecked. So Kendi 2020 insists that racism is death, whilst anti-racism is life. So what have we done in Bradford University to respond to Black Lives Matter then? So we have launched a project to decolonize our university with a view to becoming anti-racist. And I have to repeat that. The beginning is about decolonization of our university with the aim of being anti-racist. So there are many things that have helped us to take this stance of turning our words into action. Late last year, when our new Vice Chancellor, Professor Shirley Congdon, took over, the first thing she did was to look at our strategy with a vision of being a world of inclusion and equality of opportunity where people want to and can make a difference. We want to be known as the place to be to make that difference. Now, for us, that is a very good platform to work from, a platform that allows us to look at inclusion and equality of opportunity through the lens of decolonization, through the lens of being an anti-racist university. We are also fortunate that the UK has got this, the Office for Students, which insists that each university must have an access and participation plan. And this plan for us in our university allows us to have measures that balances our diversity in an intentional way to promote inclusion. We have identified outcomes that we want to see by the end of this plan, which is 2025, in eradicating structural inequality. So this gives us a fantastic opportunity to embed our decolonization and anti-racist universities work. As I've already alluded to, our project of decolonization is about creating an anti-racist university, which is aligned to our equality, diversity, and inclusion strategy with three key aims of promoting a culture of equality and better outcomes for all, where people who associate with Bradford University will have this air of and a feeling of equality and being given an opportunity to perform to their maximum potential. Another theme is making our diversity actually count. So we have a large percentage of our students, about 75% of our students are from a Black and minority ethnic background. And what we're saying is, it's not just okay to have that diversity must count. Our diversity must transform our organization. And lastly, the third theme is about enabling a climate for inclusion, which is aligned to the key enablers within our new strategy. So we've taken an anti-racist stance, and this stance is simply that being a diverse university is not enough, that diversity as part of our heritage and celebrating that diversity alone is not enough. Our claim to being the University for Social Inclusion and Social Mobility must be matched with real actions. That being non-racist is not enough, but being anti-racist is the only way forward for the University of Bradford. So what we're doing is actually looking at different areas, ensuring that we educate our students to have shared assumptions about how the world is. It's about looking at different assumptions, building that into the curriculum, challenging long-standing biases, in the way we operate as a people, in everything that we do, ranging from classrooms into how we manage people. It's about having these as the basis for operating within our anti-racist university. Thinking about the implications of a more diverse student body in terms of our pedagogy and the achievement linked to it and the outcomes linked to it. So it is not just about that token inclusion of a few Black, Asian, minority ethnic writers, but looking underneath and providing an underlying transformation from a culture of denial and exclusion to a consideration of different forms of knowledge. It's about creating spaces and resources for a dialogue so that we can all talk about ourselves, imagining our world, envisioning all cultures and knowledge systems within what our students are taught. So we embarked on this journey and we had a launch on the 21st of July. What we wanted to do was actually ask of our staff, what do we see as challenges, barriers, enablers that would help us or come in the way of us achieving these ambition of becoming an anti-racist university. So I've just given you some word clouds that we derive from this. So in terms of barriers, colleagues identified wide fragility, management, denial, HR, lack of understanding as the things that we need to watch out for and work on, because these are challenges that are likely to stop us from decolonizing our university. In looking at the enablers, it was fantastic that having the diversity on our campus is a fantastic thing, and we do need to ensure that we engage with our students, engage with our diversity, be collaborative in the way we are to ensure that we get to this ambition. It was fascinating to ask colleagues what they see as the most significant piece of evidence that will indicate to us that we are traveling in the right direction. Again, there were lists about the role of senior management team and the diversity of that team. People talked about accountability when we have leaders that are accountable to the delivery of our strategy and delivery of everything that we do. Having positive student feedback, or even student feedback that tells us that we need to do things differently and so on, will show that we are open and ready and traveling in the right direction. It's fascinating to see that UD was also one of the things that would show that we are traveling in the right direction. So what are our next steps? And we are very, very proud to say this, that it is not about papering over cracks, it's about complete dismantling and rebuilding our systems. So one of the things that we're doing is we are setting up regular race equality dialogue, giving people opportunities to talk through issues, be open and be self-reflective about how own privilege have oppressed people and how we can use privilege positively to move forward. We are working very hard and nicely with our senior team to ensure that we promote strong leadership of this program. So for example, we've got a learning partnership program where we are pairing up our executive board members with Black students in the first instance to learn about the lived experience of being Black in our academic space, Bradford University. In addition, we are getting our exec board members to champion or be advocates for different aspects of equality, diversity, and inclusion. We're setting up working groups looking at decolonization around curriculum, around research, decolonization of our people activities, decolonization work led by students, decolonization of our leadership approach and our leadership strategies. We want to be able to look at different leadership frameworks. We are looking at decolonizing our communications and making sure that we are communicating in a way that is interculturally appropriate. We're looking at decolonizing our library, looking at the kinds of textbooks that we store, auditing any monuments of oppression, working with the librarian to support staff with reading lists, diversity of reading lists. We are working to engage with communities and so on in our decolonization work. The other big thing that we're doing is we're connecting with our city, because we do know that we are part of our city. We are a civic university, and therefore our decolonization cannot just stop on campus. Our students interact with the city. So we are working very closely with the city. I'm leading the qualities group for the city, which brings together strategic leads of equality, diversity, and inclusion across public, private, third sector organizations, working very closely with the well-being board of the city to ensure that equality and diversity is embedded in everything that we do. We want our staff to come into the university, flourish around our city, being themselves. So bringing their whole selves to work is where we're coming from. And we do hope that our approach to promoting anti-discrimination, building anti-discriminatory university is one that will provide us with tools to achieve our ambitions in the new strategy. Thank you ever so much for listening.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Udi. That was such an interesting presentation. I mean, even as somebody who is based at the University of Bradford every single day, I wasn't even aware of some of those things which are going on and just how much detail this project is going into. And I actually really like the idea of diversifying everything down to a reading list and, you know, things like that that maybe have not been considered before. So thank you very much for that presentation. I'm sure everybody found it really interesting. So we've got around just over 10 minutes left for a bit of a question and answer discussion session. So I'd like to open the floor. If anybody's got any questions, please feel free to either submit them in our meeting chat, which you should be able to see at the side of your screen, or feel free to virtually raise your hand and speak to our panelists directly. So would anybody like to start? I can see some people are typing. Don't all rush at once, guys. Come on. Come on. Waiting for somebody who's typed. There we go. So we've got a question here from Johnny Jenkins. And says it says Professor Archango and Professor Archibong spoke about some of the challenges facing higher education in their respective countries. And it says, Kamilla, Trubicki, what are the biggest challenges facing higher education in your country, so in Austria?
Well, thank you for this question. Obviously, with the current global situation, online teaching, online learning is a big challenge. Let's not be negative, but challenge, definitely. Digitalization has been on our agenda even before COVID. So this kind of brings it back to digitalization. All the universities are currently working on improving their services in this area. And then, as I said before, it's really, especially for the universities, for the traditional universities, a lot of those challenges include, or issues include the transfer of technology and innovation to the regions in which they are located, because looking at our focus definitions, it's more the universities of applied sciences that would deal with, industry a lot, that would work together with companies and do a lot of applied research. So for the universities, part of it is really to focus on the technology transfer. And then big issues include third mission, inclusion, diversity, and then sustainability is a big thing. It's looking at the Austrian society, there are issues that we're facing at the moment, but they seem to differ a little bit from my colleague speakers. So obviously the society is a different one than in Brazil or in the UK, and that's why the challenges for us are slightly different as well.
Brilliant.
I hope
Thank you
this
very much.
answers the question.
I'd actually like to just pose a question to Professor Udi, if that's okay. And I just wanted to ask, your presentation obviously concentrated on using the University of Bradford as a case study within the remit of what's going on in the UK at the moment. But you did obviously touch on the global issues. And I'm just wondering, from a WTUN perspective, what can the University of Bradford being part of this international network, how can we leverage the network and its partners to help with this agenda?
I think there was an analysis that came out immediately after George Floyd and was actually looking at international universities, looking at how the response has been, and the verdict is that the response internationally has been very, very poor from higher education institutions. And therefore, some of the things that I have mentioned will apply to many institutions, because I think the world has seen so many forms of inequalities, from colonial slavery issues like that, and how those traditions have carried on in the way we interact and work with people of color. So the principles that we have applied in Bradford will work all over. Now, there has been some analysis of how decolonization project has been very superficial in the past, especially when institutions are going for the narrow perspective of just decolonizing the curriculum without looking at decolonizing things outside of the curriculum. So what we have done is actually look beyond what happens in the classroom to things that happen outside of that classroom. And sometimes people challenge the fact that the Black Lives Matter is a bit narrow, but we forget the intersections between race and other things, which we can borrow principles from the anti-racist university to support anti-sexism on campus, anti-homophobia on campus, and so on. So there's a lot that we can learn from this and apply it in other areas. So we're more than happy to share our experiences, to share the work that we're doing with WTUN universities, if that's what they would want to. And we can also involve, so we're trying to set up a national, like a network of universities that are decolonizing in the way that we've done, because there has been historical antecedents where some decolonization projects have been too narrow and therefore not effective. So we have learned from those, and the new universities that are decolonizing now, we have got principles that we can share. So I think Bradford would really be happy to share our experiences. We can learn along other universities within the network.
Brilliant.
And
Thank you
learn as well. And we want to learn as well from other members.
Of course, yeah. And I think just building on from what you were saying there, I know, Professor Udi, you were involved very heavily in the WTUN Gender Equality Pledge and the gender equality work, which the network has been working on for around the past year. And I found it very interesting when you touched on some of the measurables that some of the staff at the university were looking at, was that it included a diverse senior management team. And one of the things which we have pledged in our gender equality work is we sort of do it in two areas. And one of them is about getting more female students into STEM subjects. But another thing which came up across WTUN quite a lot was about female representation in senior management teams. So it's really interesting what you say about, different intersectionality and how one thing can help with another. And so I feel like the work that we've already started doing as a network, where we put our hands up and we say we're not great at this. If you look at the vice chancellors and the rectors at WTUN, we only have a very small percentage of female leaders on our own board. So we're the first ones to put our hands up and say we're not the example to follow. But what can we do as a network to help with this? And I think this very much ties into that, and we can move forward with that together as a network. So that's brilliant. Thank you. We're coming towards the end of the session. Does anybody have any further questions, or do any of our panelists have any closing remarks or anything they would like to ask each other?
Yes, I would just like to say that I really appreciate Professor Udi's approach of these issues of diversity and the link with Black Lives Matter. And I would like to stress that in Brazil, these questions, the race problem, are very tied with the social-economic issue as well. So for us, when we talk about inclusion and we deal with the social-economic inclusion of our students, we are also dealing with this the race issue as well, because the majority of our students coming from with low income, struggling within an inequality, from an inequality background, are also Black students. So this is very tight, and I'm really agree with you when you say that we have to decolonize not only curriculum or our practices, but also the way we think, the way we act, the way we react on our university, within our daily life, our practices, and in society. So this is a really important job, and it's a really important issue, and I think we all should be really committed with that. Even when we talk about Austria, and it's a different perspective, it's a different society, it's a different country, but we have to go together, and we have to be together and fight for these matters together. Together we will be stronger.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor. I think we've just got time for one final question, which, sorry, Professor Udi, it's come back in for you. So just in case anybody can't see it, I will read out this question. So it says, so again, it's from Johnny Jenkins. It says, I represent York St John University in the UK. In response to BLM earlier this year, we realised we were not doing enough and committed to several changes, such as joining the Race Equality Charter with the aim to achieve accreditation and decolonising the curriculum. You've just mentioned in your response to the previous question that a study showed the response of international has been poor. What's your opinion on universities' response to BLM, many of which mention diversity and equality in their promotion?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've done well in the UK. I think there was a very slow start. When George was murdered on the 25th of May, the big problem with us in the UK was that we were waiting to be shaken by our students' union. And that didn't go down very well. I think the other thing has been the kind of catch-all phraseology around EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion, and institutions not being specific to addressing anti-Blackness and the racism linked to that. I do have some things that have been written by Gopal from University of Birmingham about universities' response, and they were inappropriate. And there is also an article that I think through Freedom of Information Request looked at institutions that are decolonizing and found that only a handful of institutions were decolonizing properly, that the others were just whitewashed decolonization programs. So I think for us, we are in a good place to really learn from the institutions that have not done as well. So we've identified a few institutions that have got deeper approaches to their decolonization, and we're working very closely with them. I'm more than happy to share the articles on critique of decolonization projects in the UK universities. So I can
Brilliant,
send
thank you.
Yeah, I can send that.
Brilliant. We can share those on our website along with the recording of this session for anybody who wasn't able to make it. So that's the end of our session. We're perfect on time, and thank you everyone for your questions. Thank you to those of you who attended. Thank you to our speakers. What a wonderful set of presentations, giving an international perspective on higher education and the things that we're facing, which is what WTUN is all about. You know, we're all different and we're all the same, and so it's really great to hear from many of our different members. Thank you so much. We're going to be taking about a 15-minute break now before we move into our final couple of sessions of the day. I really hope you'll be able to join us in our showcase session, where we'll be hearing from some of our exchange recipients and also from some of our student competition participants, which is really exciting. And then at the end of the day, we'll move into a development session where it's essentially open for any delegate to sort of approach WTUN and say, this is my idea and this is how I think the network can help. So I really hope you'll all turn up to those. And tomorrow as well, where we'll be doing it all over again. So thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for attending, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.